Okay, it's raining here, but there's actually some parts that look like it was dry and you can see the sunlight coming out. Let's see if I can find a spot later on. And what did I read today? Some interesting stuff today. How about we start with this one? You know, things like drones that are getting smaller and more sophisticated. And this one here says, drone the size of a bread slice may allow Japan closer look inside damaged Fukushima nuclear plant. I would imagine it'd be a good idea to have a drone fly in areas like that instead of having someone having to go there. A drone almost the size of a sliced bread is Japan's newest hope to get a clear footage of one of the reactors inside the tsunami-hit Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, where hundreds of tons of damaged fuel remain almost 13 years after the disaster. A magnitude 9.0 quake and tsunami in March 2011 destroyed the plant's power supply and cooling systems, causing 3 reactors to melt down. Massive amounts of fatality, radioactive melted nuclear fuel remain inside to this date. Yeah, it doesn't sound like a place I guess you'd want to send a lot of people to investigate and document. It says the plant's operating company, Tokyo Electric Power Company Holdings, unveiled Tuesday small drones they want to use to gather more data from parts of one of the reactors previously inaccessible. TEPCO has previously tried sending robots inside each of the 3 reactors but got hindered by debris, high radiation, and inability to navigate them through the rubble, though they were able to gather some data in recent years. During Tuesday's demonstration at the Japan Atomic Energy Agency's mock-up facility in Naraha, a drone weighing only 185 grams circled around, showcasing its maneuvering ability, carefully avoiding obstacles and mock-up remains that included an abandoned robot from a 2015 internal probe. It also continuously sent a black and white live feed using its installed camera to an operation room. So that's kind of cool too. I would think too, in general, in terms of a robot, wouldn't that be considered as a quote drone as well? The only difference is this one that they're using actually flies versus being ground-based. It says in February, the company intends to send the drones inside the primary containment vessel of the #1 reactor at Fukushima Daiichi power plant. 2 drones will first inspect the area around the exterior of the main structural support in the vessel, called the pedestal, before deciding if they can dispatch the other 2 inside, the area previous probes could not reach. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what comes out of this in terms of all the video and so forth too, but good way to use the tech in my opinion. And this piece of information was going around a lot today here anyways, and it's kind of a big deal, a really big one actually, I would imagine, if it fully goes through. If you guys remember, not too long ago here in Canada, because of things like protests with the truckers and so forth, the Canadian government decided to enact the Emergencies Act, which gave them extraordinary powers to freeze people's bank accounts, for example, essentially treating it as if we're in a war. Even if people donated to, I suppose, certain causes like $1 or something like that, like to those truckers, to my knowledge, they would still consider them as a threat, I guess, to the country. Now there's debates whether or not that was justified, and to my knowledge anyways, they had some kind of hearing that they determined, they had the rights, I suppose, or it was fully understandable why they enacted that Emergencies Act. But apparently through federal court, a judge said nope, this Emergencies Act was basically illegal. I guess that's what you could say anyways. But some details as well as to how they came up with that conclusion. It seemed like one of the points was this Emergencies Act technically affected the whole country, and as you know, that incident was in one particular province, initially anyways, in terms of the trucker protest blocking bridges and so forth in Ontario. And it says here, the Prime Minister's letter did not directly address requirements in Section 3A of the EA that the situation be of such proportions or nature as to exceed the capacity or authority of a province to deal with it. As of February 15, 2022, this was only true in Ontario because of the situation in Ottawa, and that was in part due to the inability of the provincial and municipal authorities to compel tow truck drivers to assist in the removal of the blockading vehicles. It is not clear why that could not have been dealt with under the provincial legislation. The use of the military heavy equipment was considered but dismissed for reasons which remain redacted by accept as valid. There appears to have been no obstacle to assembling large numbers of police officers from a variety of other forces ultimately required to assist the OPS to remove the blockade participants. That was one of the arguments I've heard, where it sounded like they could have potentially did something, but they decided not to. I think one of the best example was the Prime Minister here. He decided not to even talk to the group in general and let it escalate, calling them names and so forth. And I guess the argument there, as they say, it didn't seem like it was out of reach provincially to try to sort the situation out. And as you read more, there's parts such as saying here, it is declared that the decision to issue the proclamation and the associated regulations and order was unreasonable and ultra-vires the Emergencies Act. It is declared that the regulations infringe Section 2B of the Charter and declared that the order infringed Section 8 of the Charter and that neither infringement was justified under Section 1. So what does this ultimately mean overall? To my understanding, people were saying because this was ruled in court as, I guess, an unjustified use of those powers, you could sue the government for any damages as a result. That's what I read anyways. But at the same time, I was reading all these reports on how the government is going to potentially, or they are anyways, appeal this. So if they do win, essentially it'll be back to square one from that perspective. And it's kind of interesting hearing the comments, I guess, from that finance minister person saying how people have to remember it was very serious, like the situation and all that.
So we are aware of the court decision. We have discussed it with the Prime Minister, with cabinet colleagues, with senior federal government officials and experts. We respect very much Canada's independent judiciary. However, we do not agree with this decision, and respectfully, we will be appealing it. I would just like to take a moment to remind Canadians of how serious the situation was in our country when we took that decision.
I mentioned it before on the day too. I was watching things like the live stream and it seemed kind of peaceful from what I saw anyways. People dancing and so forth, mostly people honking horns. You could argue it's annoying, that I could see for some of the complaints, but at the same time, I don't know if that justifies, for example, again, things like an Emergencies Act, as if they're terrorists with guns trying to shoot every politician, like that type of thing. It didn't seem like that at all, in my opinion anyways, but it'd be kind of interesting to see what happens here, because again, that is kind of a big deal, isn't it? Look at how many people were affected. I know people were very emotional too, where you did have a side of people that wanted to, for example, wish harm upon certain people with different views and all that, but again, what happens here afterwards if this actually sticks? All right, see you guys later.